My dad writes nonfiction. So when I was younger, I was exposed to a lot of this type of books, right? A lot of these books that actually aid in personal development. So whenever there was no power in the house and I wasn't drawing or watching TV, I had no other choice than to entertain myself with a lot of these books. So I actually got invested in a lot of personal development books whilst I was young. I didn't carry that attitude to adulthood because I have this thing where once you the thing about these books is that whenever you get into them, they charge you up so much. They create this feeling of urgency that you have to get things done, right? You are taking notes, you are having ideas, but the thing about reading these books constantly is that you are not taking action. They are good, right? But if you are not taking action and then you're reading the next book and then reading the next book, that is not a good thing. You're going to find yourself in a spiral of just continuously looking for something that's just going to keep you charged up while you are not actually executing anything. And to be honest, I kind of got addicted to that while I was younger. So in as much as I became somebody that had a really good mindset, to a large extent, I do enjoy a lot of personal development and inspirational content. So most of the time, you would find me just scrolling, just doom scrolling, looking for something that will just spoil me and just charge me to actually get back to work. And over the years, even though this is a habit that I fall back into occasionally, probably a few times a week, to be honest, I have learned to rely a lot more on direction than feelings and emotions to actually get things done. I've learned to have a direction, have a map of where I want to go, right? Have a thing I want to accomplish and then actually follow that map and get things done. But I always try to make room for adventure, to make room to explore, to make room to be actually inspired by something along the way. And the funny thing about inspiration is that it doesn't, a lot of the time you don't get inspired or motivated when you are just actually looking for motivation actually kind of meets you in the middle of action. So when you're actually getting things done, when you're actually executing, that is when you actually get motivated because you're actually seeing yourself creating something. You're actually seeing yourself bringing something to life. That thing you have in your head, you're bringing it to manifestation. So as an artist, motivation is created by actually taking action, but most of the times we are not inspired or motivated to take action. And the thing about being a creative or an artist, like doing things like music, doing things like writing, doing things like speaking, let's say speaking is your passion, doing things like drawing, these things are creative endeavors. And the thing about it, well, a lot of things are creative endeavors, but a lot of the time, if you are chasing a creative dream like this, you actually have to treat it as a profession. You have to be professional about it. That's the only way you're actually going to take that abstract thing you have in your brain and actually bring it to reality. And a lot of artists, I believe, face this thing called burnout, because they love art, right? They love drawing, they love creating, but a lot of the time don't have that idealized thing that they actually want to do, that they don't have a mission that they want to accomplish as artists, right? Despite the fact that art is something that is fun, right, that you enjoy doing, there are a lot of days where you are not going to enjoy it, where you will not be inspired, where no matter the type of art you look, like you look at this amazing artists that you actually love, no matter the amount of their works you look at, you just can't feel inspired to just pick up a pen. And the days where you actually do that, irrespective of the fact that you don't feel inspired, those are the days that you actually win. And you are going to experience a lot more of those type of days than you are days where you feel inspired. I'm someone that believes that there are not enough stories about there are not enough African stories in the world, right? There are not enough stories with African characters in the world. So instead of complaining and yelling about it to the world, what I've decided to do is create a lot of stories using the skill that I have, which is drawing, and create a lot of stories using African characters, right? And this is something I know that I would probably not see the rewards of it in my lifetime. It's something that might take 4 or 5 lifetimes, but building the foundation is something I've been willing to accept and just like start out. And I know I'm not the only one that feels this way. There are other artists and creatives across Africa and the world in general that feel like this. So that personally is something that I have taken as my own personal mission, right? Just creating a lot of characters using with African descent that are related to like my country and things like that, right? I don't care if it's going to blow up or not. Just the fact that it exists is a reward on its own. Of course, I want it to be something that I can generate revenue from, and actually be able to take care of my family whilst accomplishing this dream that I have. With that kind of idea in my head, right? It's something that is a lot bigger than myself, right? Even though it's overwhelming, but I also come to terms with the fact that it's something that I probably won't achieve alone, and something I probably wouldn't achieve in my lifetime. But starting it up and then probably passing the torch to someone else is something that I am willing to do. So that mission alone is enough to get me inspired, right? And even though the inspiration for like that is created by that mission doesn't exist, the fact that the mission exists is more than enough to push me to work, even without relying on emotion, without relying on the inspiration that is generated from that mission itself, that possibility that I have in my head that I want to come to pass. Apart from the goal that I have, I've learned to adopt an identity, right? So if anybody asks me what I do, I'll say I'm an artist, right? I'm a comic book artist. I write stories, right? And just that fact alone sets me apart from like the type of person I was a few years ago, where I actually wanted to do art for just money, right? As much as I wanted to do art to actually create stories, because I was in love with comic books and animated stories a long time ago. If I didn't have money, right? If I didn't have money, nothing. Well, if I just see something as simple as like an anatomy book, like, or a skeleton, or any illustration around, like, I always get inspired to draw. I always get inspired to tell stories. So creating that identity, establishing that identity, makes me be able to execute no matter the situation, no matter the condition. If I were to, for instance, lose access to the internet, I'm not able to put out things anymore, I'm unable to share my work, and I was left with just my drawing tablet, I would still draw, I would still work. If I, like, no matter what I was doing in this life, like, if I, because initially I had gone to university to actually become a lawyer, but I wasn't able to get in the first year. But then I actually applied for a different course, history and international studies, the second year, to write a different exam in a different state, and then I got into university. Even if I had gotten into university doing law, writing stories and doing comic books is something I believe I would still be doing, because it's just so attached to my being. It's something that is just part of myself, and I've created an identity as someone who writes stories, as an artist. It's kind of someone who is like a farmer, right? Once you have this identity as someone that actually grows something, that plants something, irregardless of the fact that you may not be making as much money from it as you probably would like to make, you would still grow plants and take care of animals, irregardless of the fact that you're getting paid from it. Of course, a lot of people actually get into it to get paid, but a lot of people actually have passion for it, and they've created an identity as someone that actually grows plants, as a farmer. And once they have that identity, every single water that they actually put into that plant, every single manure that they apply on that farm, every single feed that they buy for the animals that they're actually feeding, it begins to actually make a lot more sense. You have to have a reason for being as an artist, and it doesn't have to be something substantial. It can be something as simple as, I want to be the best artist I can be. It could be something as simple as, I want to create art for introverted people, for them to feel seen. It could be something as simple as, I want to create an art that tells the story of my family, that tells the story of my culture. I want to create art that will inspire kids to follow their passion. I want to create art that will inspire kids to, become artists as well. It doesn't have to necessarily be something that is special. The mission or the goal or the thing you want to achieve that keeps you going doesn't have to be anything special. It doesn't have to be anything that everybody wants. It just has to be something that is yours, that comes from within, and that you're willing to actually work towards. I understand waiting or wanting to feel inspired before you actually create something. I do feel like that a lot of the time. Sometimes, like when I get burnt out, or I feel like I'm doing a lot but I'm not getting what I expected to get, that is when the thing that you actually want to do forces you to push past that feeling, right? Because a lot of the times, majority of the time, it's not like we lack the capacity, because we are eating every day, we are sleeping every day, we are shitting every day, we are talking to people every day. Like, we are the things that makes us human, we do that every single day. So the things that make us an artist, we should also be able to do that every day, because I actually believe that if you are doing all these things every day, definitely you can draw every day. You can actually put in, even if it's 30 minutes on your dream, even if it's 10 minutes on that thing you actually want to achieve, you can actually put time into that thing every single day. Whether the weather changes or not, the ship will keep sailing. We'll still get to our destination, right? Things that you want to accomplish in this life, right? You would never really accomplish them if you're always dependent on your mood, if you're always dependent on how you feel. Imagine if our parents actually, raised us like that. To be fair, there are people in this world, there are parents in this world that, of course, they don't deserve to be parents, but majority, really and truly, there are a lot of good parents in this world. And imagine if a lot of these parents didn't take care of their child even when they were tired, when their child was crying in its crib, and they just decided to sleep rather than actually giving attention to that child whenever that child was in need, whenever that child was hungry, whenever that child had pooped his pants, right, and felt uncomfortable. So it's sort of the same way you have to treat the things you want to accomplish. You have to treat it like your child, right? It needs a lot of attention. So whenever you can, you need to give it attention to the best of your ability. And that is the only way to function, right? It goes past mood. It goes past how you're feeling. It shouldn't depend on the weather, right? It's kind of like execution. It's kind of like, how to put this now? It's kind of like a captain, right? Okay, you're a captain, right? And a lot of the times, in these movies, whenever you see, like, if you've watched, what the hell do they call this movie? Vikings, right? Or any movie about adventures on the sea. A lot of the times you see that they complain a lot about the weather. They complain a lot about the environment and how it affects the speed at which they are moving at, right? So despite the fact that a lot of the time the weather could be bad, the weather could not support the mission that they are going on, they could have an estimation on when they wanted to cross that ocean to actually conquer like a land, or probably go back to meet their families. The problem with being at sea, a lot of the times in these movies, is that the wind affects how fast they move. And instead of the captains, a lot of the time, a lot of the leaders or the conquerors in these movies, instead of them complaining about the wind, which, well, they do sometimes, they always tell their subordinates to actually adjust something about what they're doing. Like they have to execute something. Either they tell the people manning the oars to apply more effort, or they adjust the sails of the ship or whatever it is that they are riding, so that it can actually keep them on track, to keep them on mission. And that's sort of the ways you sort of have to take that mindset and apply it to your arts life, right? To you being an artist, to you being a creative. And if you are always dependent on the wind, which we could use that as a metaphor for our emotions and our mood, you will always be fluctuating. You won't get to where you want to go on time. You won't execute as much as you want to execute. And it's something that I'm still learning. It's something I'm still trying to improve on. We're humans, and you won't be perfect in a day. You won't adjust your attitude in a day. It's going to take time, but you need to have something, that thing that you look up to, like that thing that you actually want to accomplish. And it has to be a lot of the times bigger than just a fleeting feeling in the afternoon. You can't be leaving your emotions to a random, like your source of execution or inspiration for execution, to a random guy on the internet, or to a random person that you just peradventure just came across on TikTok or Instagram. It's not always a question of how you felt. It's a question of what you created despite how you felt, what you were able to do, irregardless of your mood, irregardless of your feeling. Have a nice day, guys.